Welcome to the fastest stop in town, Today Masechtas Megillah Daf Yud Zayin. We are going to begin on Tes Zayin Amud Beis, about 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marte, Gadol Talmud Torah Yoser Mikivud Avim. Learning Torah is even greater than honoring one's parents. Shekol Oisin Shanim, all the years Shel Yaakov Avinu Bebeis Ever, the years that he was learning in Yeshiva Shem Aver, or it just says here Shem, it says Aver, lo nenesh, he wasn't punished. The Yomer, Mars, we say as follows, as we continue in Zayin with Aleph, Loman nimnu shenaisav shel Yishmael. Why do we mention the years of Yishmael? How old he was when he died? Why is that important? After all, he was in Russia, even though Rashi says, the truth is he did do tshuva. We do it to contrast it to Yaakov. So Yishmael was 137 years. Now, he was 14 years older. So we know that, of course, Avraham had this child Yitzchak when he was 100 years old, but he also had Yishmael when he was 86. They are 14 years apart. Avram ben Shmainim Shanim v'Sheish Shanim b'ledes Hagar es Yishmael Avram. It says beferish that he was 86, so there's a 14-year gap between the two. Avraham ben Mashana b'Voldu lo es Yitzchak beno. He was 100 when Yitzchak was born. Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana b'ledes Oisam. So it says that Yitzchak was 60 years old when he gave birth to them, namely to Yaakov and to Esav. So Bar Kama Havi Yishmael. How old was Yishmael Kedis Yolid Yaakov when Yaakov was born? Bar Shivim V'Arba. He was 74. So why? Again, if we mention that he was Avraham and Yitzchak were exactly 100 years apart, and it says that Yitzchak was 60 years old. So if Yitzchak was 60 years old when he had his kids, so his older brother Yishmael was 14 years older. He was 74 years old when Yaakov and Esav were born. So Kama Paishin Mishneh. So how many more years did he have left from his 137? So Shitin Utlas, 63, because 74 is how old he was when the twins Yaakov and Esav were born, and an additional 63 years will be when he dies in 137. From the time that Yaakov was blessed from his father Yitzchak, ben Shishim v'sholosh shana, he was actually 63. Ubo HaParak, during that time, Meis Yishmael. During that time, Yishmael died. So all this makes sense. Yar Esav kiberach ve'elch Esav el Yishmael v'yikach as machas bas Yishmael achos nevoyos namamash mishenemar bas Yishmael enu yodea shi achos nevoyos. Why does it need to mention this? Molamid shekidshi Yishmael umeis, that Yishmael was mekadesh and then died. Says Rashi, Avia, the father, Umeis v'hisia nevoyos achia, and then he married the sister, nevoyos, v'hisia nevoyos achia, shtin utlas. So you have 63 v'ar beisar, and then another 14 adis yelid Yosef, until Yosef was born, ha shivim v'shiva. So that equals 77. So, fine. So he was 77. Dechsev v'Yosef ben Shishim Shana. Yosef was Shloshim Shana, was 30 years old. But Amdol Ifnei Paroi, when he was standing in front of Paro. Hameh v'Sheva, which means that now Yaakov was add another 30 years to 77 is 107. Shave the Sva, you should remove or include rather another 7 years of the years of famine, the Tarti de Kafna, and 2 years of famine, which is another 9, Hamev Shitsar, that's 100. So we went from 107 Add another 7 is 114, and then you have another 2 is 116. He asked a strange question. He asked, how old are you? He said he was 130 years. You really should be 116. Those 14 years they was in yeshiva don't even count. Those years don't even count. And therefore he was there an extra 14 years, and that's how we understand that must be how that all happened. Fine. Desanya Yaakov beis Aver. Now Yaakov was in the house of Aver Mutman Arbes Rishana. So he said he was there for 14 years. Aver died. Le'achar shiyored Yaakov Avinu le'aram neharayim. Shtei shanim was 2 years. Yasim Yishom, he left from there. Uvol aram neharayim nimsa k'shamad al be'er, when he stood by the well, ben shivim v'sheva shana. He was 70 years. So how do you know that he was not punished because he spent all these years not going back, even though it was supposed to be Devar Machadim? He didn't go back to his parents as was requested. To sign the Nimsa Yosef Shepirish Me'aviv Esun Utar Ushtayim Shana, that Yosef left his father for 22 years. Kashem Shepirish Yaakov Avinu Mi'aviv, just like Yaakov left his father 20 years. Now Yaakov, the Talas of Shishahavid, he was really 36 years. What do you mean 22 years? Ella Arbesa to have those 14 years didn't count because he was learning Torah, and therefore that's Doich Kivav Aim. Sof the base of Lavan Esnim Shnin Habi. He was only in the house of Lavan for 20 years. 7 years he was working for Rachel, and 7 for Leah, and then 6 the accumulation with the spotted and speckled animals. Elamishum dishtahi beorcha tartin shnin. He was also on the road for 2 years. The Sanya Yatzim Aram Narayim Avalo Sukais. Yasa Sham Shmoina Aser Chaydish was there 18 months. Shenemar Yaakov Nasa Sukais even little bias when he was Sukos. He built barns. Ulabase El Asa Shisha Chadashim Hikru Zvachim. It was Makim Svachim over there. So he spent 2 additional years, that's a total of 22. But the question is, really should be 36. But those 14 years he was in the Shem and Aver did not count as because again, perhaps it's not that you can show disrespect to your parents by learning Torah, but maybe by learning Torah, the parents say, even though the parents want you to be by you, but sometimes the parents would rather you learn in a yeshiva far away, even though it may be emotionally difficult for them, because they know that that's what's best for you by learning Torah. Hanulach Megillah Nikris. Hanulach Megillah Nikris, second parak. Hakaris Megillah Mafreya Lo Yatsu. You can't read it out of order. You can't read the last parak and the first, which could also mean if, let's say, you get to shul late and you hear just the second half, you can't read the first half afterwards. Karel Pev, you read it by heart. Kara Targum, you read it through a translation. B'cholashin lo yatsa. Avakarin oisel lazos belaz. I want to understand what exactly that means. Says Rashi, Kol she'enu lashon hakodesh nikro laz. Anything which is not lashon hakodesh is laz. So you could use, if it's in a different language and you read it in that foreign language, then apparently that's okay. V'aloy sheshama shuris yatsa. If someone, let's say, doesn't speak Hebrew, but they hear lashon hashuris, but they really speak English, for example, you're yatsa. Kar sirugin. If a person reads it, sirugin, the Gemara is going to explain that you read a little and you stop. You keep stopping. Umasnam name. The person dozes off. To what extent? We'll see yatsa. Hayikaisva. If you're writing the Megillah, darsha, you're expounding. Megillah, you're fixing it. Im kivin libo yatzavim lavo yatsa, which comes to teach us. Apparently, Mrs. Richa's Kavanah what to see. Haisik suva v'sam v'sikra v'chaimus v'kankatum al nair vel ha'difdera lo yatsa. If a person uses these different inks or paper in which is not something which is davar shel kayama, that is not going to last, the Gemara is going to explain all these things, you're not yatsa. What do you need to do? It's actually hiksuva shuras al sefer b'diyoi. that he has to be written blush and shuris, has to be on a sefer, Rashi says, with cloth on a parchment, and with the proper ink. How do we know it can't be read l'mafreya? So Amar Rav v'Amar Kra kich savam v'kizmanam has to be properly the way it's written. Ma kizmanam l'mafreya lo, av savam l'mafreya lo. Just like it's impossible for the 15th of Adar to come before the 14th, 14 then 15, so too it can't be written or read rather out of order. Fine. Midi kriya ksiva hacha. So what do you mean? Kriya ksiva hacha. It's over here. It's talking about writing, not reading. Asiya ksiva. Dechsev v'yois oisim es yom shnei hayomim el mahacha. We learn out from here. Dechsev v'hayomim el niskarim v'nasim. Iska sechiru lasiya. Ma'asiyah l'mafreya lo. Av sechira l'mafreya lo. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Mazman l'mafreya lo. Fine. That just like the doing cannot be done l'mafreya, so too the zechira has to be done in the proper order. Tana v'chein b'halil v'chein b'krishma u'tefila. All these other things also have to be done in the proper order. You can't say them out of order. Halil, Menolan, so Rabbi Mizrach Hashem Hashem B'voi. It says in Halil from the east, the sun goes in the east, it goes in a certain direction. Rav Yosef Hashem. This day has to be done in the proper order. Rav Avi Yomer Yehi Shem Hashem B'vorech. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Mi'item Rav Acham Yaakov Yomer Mahacha Mi'atav Yad Oilam. From now on. So you see that there's this pattern of time. Kriya Shema Desanya. This is also brachos. Beginning the second paragraph over there. Desanya Kriya Shema Kechsava. Divrei Rabbi. It has to be read in the proper way that it's written. In Lashon Ashuris, Lashon Kodesh. You could say the Shema in any language. So my time, the Rabbi Amar Kraz, we continue to Yud Zayin Mebez. V'hayu v'avyosin you. It has to be in its original way it's written. This is the way it must be said. For Rabban my time, Amar Kraz Shema b'chol lashon shata shemaya. You can say in any language. Rabbi Nami Haksiv Shema. It does say Shema, which is mashmi. You should be able to say b'chol lashon. So huma boile Hashem will azdach b'ashatem ma'asem b'picha. You actually have to hear what you say. Rabban and Sabri commandi Amar Makaris Shema v'lo hishmil azna yatsa. If you didn't hear it, you're still yaitza. So therefore, they don't need that pasuk for that. Rabban Nami Haksiv b'hayu. B'hayu is mashmul chara, has to be b'lashon kodesh. Now huma boile shel yikol mafreya. This is how we learn out. B'hayu teaches us that it cannot be read out of order. You have to say the Shema in the proper way. Even though ironically, it's not in order because we read the third paragraph of Shema, which in the order of the Torah is before the first and second paragraphs, which is in Parsha Shlach, as opposed to the first paragraph, which is in the Eschanan, and the second in Akev. But of course, that's not what it means. It's referring to the order of how the Chachamim were masakin the Shema, that you have Shema, then B'Hoyim Shema, then B'Yomer. It has to be done precisely that way, as the Mishnah in Masechtas Brachos elaborates, as well as the Gemara, a couple of reasons why it's done that way. For Rabbi Shlo Yikom Afrei Menole Midvarm Hadvarm, extra hay. For Bandavarm Hadvarm Lo Shamilahu, they don't make a drasha from that hay. Now Leivik Sava Rabbi Kol Torah Kul B'Chol Lashon Nemra. In general, you could do el mitzvahs in any language. The Is Agatayta B'Chol Lashon Kodesh Nemra Solam Lil Mechna B'Hayu. Why does it say B'Hayu by Shema? It must be only by Shema is it required, otherwise not. No. Maybe the din is you always have to say Lashon Kodesh. So why does it say B'Hayu here? Isra Chasakdan Mina Shema. Because since it says Shema, you maybe make the mistake to think over here is where we're lenient, that you can say in any language. Kurabana. So Kazam Rachmana B'Hayu. So say the same question the other way around. Maybe when it comes to all the mitzvahs, it must be said in Lashon Kodesh. Never can say in any language. Why does it have to say Shema over here? Maybe only over here you can say in any language. Mashma Kol Torah Kula has to be in Lashon Kodesh. No. Israch. Really, maybe all mitzvahs can be done in B'chol Lashon in any language. Shema. How do we know that the Shemon Esrei has to be done in order? And this will take us actually deep into Yud Ches Amud Aleph, because we're going to go through all of the brachos and show there's a reason why it's in that order. The sign is Shimon HaPekuli Hister Shmoyne Esrei Brachos Lifnei Rabbi Gamliel Al HaSeder B'Yavna. So what did Shimon HaPekuli establish? Amar Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lo B'Masnisa Tana Me'av Esrim Zakenim Uvehem kam neviim tiknu shmoyne esri brachos al seder. They established that it should be done in a particular order. Tanurban. Menayin she'amrim avos. So why do we say avos first? Shnemar, as it says in Tehillim, Shnemar havul Hashem b'nei Elim. And b'nei Elim is referring to our avos. Interesting. Shimon Apikuli, Rashi says, Yesh Amrim Shemis Taker Basemer. He actually was involved in the business of cotton. That's why he was called a Pikuli. Which is interesting. That was what his name was. He's one of the greatest rabbis that are found in all of Judaism. But that's what he did. He was involved in cotton, so it's called Shimon Apikuli. Which is strength, which is B'chai Mesim and the rain. Which we say this when we put away the Torah on Shabbos. So these psukim are all in a particular order, so that's how you're supposed to say the first three paragraphs. So why is Bina of Atah Chaynin Lo Adam Das the next bracha number 4? Shnamar Vikdishu es Kodesh. Yaakov, it mentions Kedusha, and then says Ves Elokei Yisrael Yaritzu. The Samach Lein, right afterwards, it says V'yodu Tayiruach, Ruach Bina. So it mentions Chachma and Bina right after Kedusha. So therefore, again, it has to be that way because that's how the Pesukim write it. Umaro Lemer Tshuva Achar Bina Dechsev Ulavavo Yovin V'shav V'rafalo. So we see that this is the proper order. It talks about tshuva, and then afterwards it talks about refuah. So Yehachi Lema Refuah Basu de Tshuva. So refuah, which is bracha number 8, that should come right after Haroi Tzeb is Shuvah. So why do we say Salach Lanu and then Geula before that? The Yoshev El Hashem Birachamenu Ve'elokinu Ki Yerbo Tzloach. So Maichas is Samach Samach. So Kosev Korachmin is another pasuk. So you have one pasuk says one thing, one says the other. So you come a third pasuk, which is the Machriya. That you forgive me from all my sins. Fine. Haroifi koil tachalu achi. Hagoyel meshachas chayochi. So remember the Geul or Refuah basar slichi. That pasuk shows you clearly that Geul and Refuah come after the slicha. I have eksiv shavarafalai. Kahu lav Refuah the tachluim. That's not referring to the refuah for sicknesses. El refuah the slichahi. This is to be healed for your misdeeds. To be healed from your misdeeds. So ma'ro lemer geula b'shvius. So why is geula the 7th? So Rabbi Mitasha see the way he go b'shvius. Lafikach kavua b'shvius. So it's interesting that the Gemara in Erchin says that the first and second Beis Hamikdash were all destroyed b'moitzi shvius. Or possibly b'shvius, maybe it's only by the first Beis Hamikdash. There's some inyan of shvius, which is a conclusion of a cycle, is when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and we see that eventually the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt on shvius. The Yom Mar, b'shishis kailus. The 6th year, we're going to hear voices and sounds. B'shvius milchamos, there'll be wars. B'moitzi shvius ben David ba. Actually, it's b'moitzi shvius. Milchamta. Because the Milchama is the beginning of the Geula. Once you see the war, that's actually the beginning stages of our redemption. So why is Refuah of the 8th? So because a baby is born, a boy, on the 8th day, they have a bris milah, and that child needs a Refuah. And therefore, since on the day 8 is a need of a Refuah, so too, this is when the child should have a Refuah. This is the day in which a child should be healed on the 8th, and therefore that's the 8th bracha. So why is the blessing of asking for sustenance? Why is that number 9? So this is keneged the mafki sharim, which are the businesses and those who are engaged in selling things. The chsiv shavar zaroa rasha. The David ki amr b'chias amr, and David, when he said this, he said it in the 9th. Now it's interesting, if you see in the Torah or it says Sham Yud, that this was actually the 10th. So the pshat is that the first 2 paragraphs is brought down in Masechtas Brachos. The first 2 paragraphs of Tehillim are really like 1. It's really 1. So therefore, even though it says 10, it's really number 9. So Zerah Rosh of David Kiyamar B'Chias Amra. Fine. Umaro Loimer Kibbutz Goliath Le'acher Birchas Hashanim. Why is the ingathering of our exiles after that? Dechsev, it says in Yecheskel, V'yatem Har Yisrael An Pechem Titenu Uperiachem Tisu Am Yisrael Ki Kervu Lavoi. Once we were gathered, Nasadon Bershayim, Hashem Din Bershayim. The judges, Hashem judges the wicked. Shnemer v'yashiv yadi alayich the esraif kabor sigoyich. Uksiv, and you can see in the same area, these psukim in Shaya, Yashivish of Taich Kavrishayna. The Kivan Shanasa Din Min Rashayim Kolu Hapoishim, the sinners go away. But Koil Zaydim Imahem, as well as those wanton sinners. Shnemer v'shever Poishim v'chatoyim Yachtov. Kivan Shekol Hapoishim, once the Rishayim are gone, Misroi Memes Karen Tzadikim. So the horn is uplifted for the righteous. Except v'chol Karni Rishayim Agadeya. Tiroi mamno karnos tzadik v'koil geri hatzedek ima tzadikim shnemar memnei sivatokava darta p'ti zakim v'samachlei v'chiyagor itchem ger v'hechem Yisrael memes karnim Yerushalayim, where they uplifting their horns to Yerushalayim shnemar shol shalom Yerushalayim yishalyav avayich v'kivan shenivnis Yerushalayim, once Yerushalayim is built, but David, then Meshech ben David comes shnemar, as it says in Chesman Aleph. Achar Yeshuva b'nei Yisrael uvikshu as Hashem Elokechem. There's David, Malcolm, and David comes, the king. V'kivan sheva David basa tefillah. Once David comes, tefillah comes. Shnemer v'hav yoisim el har kadshi v'semachtim v'veis tefillasi. Kivan shebasa tefillah basa avoda. Tefillah comes, so avoda comes. Shnemer loisim v'zivchechem l'ratzan al-mizbechi. Which again, this pasuk is quoted in Slichos right before we say Shema Chaleinu. V'kivan shebasa avoda bas. Basa Taida. Once avoda comes, so does our thanksgiving, us thanking Hashem. Shnemer zavech Taida yichab danani umaro loim berachas kohanim achar hoida. So why do we say berachas kohanim afterwards? You say v'yisa aronas yadav eloham. He lifted up his hands. V'yavarchem, and he blessed them. V'yerid masois hachatos v'oil v'shlomim. And then he went down to bring the various karbanos. Ema Kaidim avoda, so maybe it should be said before then, before avoda. It sounds like you first do berachas kohanim, then avoda. Lo sachatad l'chsiv ve'yered ma'asos achatois v'garmer miksiv lasos me asos ksiv, which is mashma that it was already done. V'lemra achar avoda. So then say it afterwards, right afterwards, not after modim. Lo sachatad l'chsiv zoivech taida. So you have zoivech taida, which is mashma. You're supposed to do that next. The sun was a high, some was a high. It makes sense that the avoda and the hoda is really linked. So why is sim shalom last? At the very end of Berachas Kohanim, right after we say I'll bless them. And the blessing of Hashem is peace. Okay. So the fact that it's written in this exact order obviously shows that it must be done that way, and therefore it cannot be done. We're going to stop there. Let's see a couple questions. So we went out from that Hakaru Mafrez Lo Yatza. Question 4. Madua kabod birchas refuah b'shminas. We said because a baby. Umadua birchas hashanim b'chias. We said because the paragraph of Mafkiah Sha'arim about the gates of the business people, that is mentioned by David in the 9th pasuk of Shavar Zerah Rasha. And therefore, because of that, It's mentioned in the 9th kapitel Tehillim, and that's why we say that in the 9th paragraph of the Shmon Esrei. TA 5. Maha Mokor Shakara Halul Mafrei Lo Yatza. Kosav Lefchais 3 mitaych 4. That is a hard question. They want you to come up with 3 or 4 answers how we see that Halal cannot be done Mafreya. So let me think if I can remember them. Mimizrach Shemesh Ad Mevoyai. Miyata Viad Oilam. That's 2. I'm supposed to come up with at least 3. Let's see. V'chein B'Halel. Halal Menol. So I said Mimizrach Shemesh Ad Mevo. Zeh Hayom Asa Hashem. Yishem Hashem Avarach Miyata Viad Olam. And Miyata Viad Olam. Yishem Hashem Avarach and Miyata Viad Olam. So I guess if I can just remember that, then I'll be okay. That was TA 5. Difficult question to remember all those psukim, or maybe we say Halal, you can remember it. Let's see, question 6. We didn't do that one. TB 7. Elo Devarim Im Kar L'Mafrei Lo Yatza. That's an easier question. So Megillah, Hallel, Shema, Tefillah. Adkan.